Welcome to Love Shouldn't Hurt. My name is Hillary Platt, and I coordinate the Domestic Abuse Division for Jewish Family and Children's Service of Southern New Jersey. And I have the pleasure of welcoming our guest, Gabriela Mosquera, New Jersey Assemblywoman. Thank you so much for coming today and being our guest.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sure. So we have met several times in the past because you are very passionate on domestic abuse issues, and we keep running into each other in those venues. So I wanted to know, actually, before I ask you what your connection is with it, I just want to give a little definition to our audience about what domestic abuse is,
Oh, sure.
in case this is the first time they're watching our show, because our show is all about topics that relate to domestic abuse. So in case you don't know, domestic abuse is a pattern of coercion in an intimate relationship that is meant to have an imbalance of power and control, to intimidate, to control someone. It could be with your loved one, it could be with a roommate. There's several different scenarios. It doesn't have to be physical, it could be emotional, it could be digital with stalking, with social media, it could be financial, it could be sexual, and I'm not sure if I mentioned emotional. That's pretty much a key with all of them. You can't really have one kind of abuse and not have that emotional scarring from it. So there's all types of abuse. Some people aren't even aware that they're in an abusive relationship. And so we're here to educate and do some outreach and talk about different areas of domestic abuse. So what has made you so passionate about it and so involved in the community and changing the bills and the laws?
Well, first of all, first domestic violence is an important issue. It's actually a nationwide epidemic, and I think it's time that people are aware that this happens everywhere and all the time.
Not to someone else.
No, it happens in our own backyards, within our own families, and our close ones.
Right.
Yep. And why I'm so passionate about it is because it happened to me, not personally to me, but it happened to my mother. My mother is a survivor of domestic violence. My brothers and I are children of this woman who survived this. So as a child, I witnessed it. I lived through it. I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. I know. So, and it's something that never really goes away. I am an adult, and when I hear women victims, and they tend to be females, but they are cases where they're male victims as well. But in my case, when I listen to these victims talk about their stories, I just go back to, when I was a child
But that really attests to your strength, because I would think that something that maybe cut so close to home that I might not be able to, put myself in the trenches and listen to survivors talk, because it might be difficult emotionally. So that's so amazing that even though it cuts so close to home, that you can,
yeah,
be empathetic and make a change.
Well, because I think it's important, because when I listen to these victims, I see my mother. That's who I see. When I know that these victims have children, I see me in those children, and I know what it feels like, being a child, feeling helpless, wanting to do something, but being so scared because you're afraid that, in my case, it would be my father. If you don't know what my father, I didn't know at the time when I was a child what my father would do to me if I tried to help my mom, and I wanted to help my mother.
When did you realize in your own personal life as a child that something was wrong, that it wasn't the norm?
I guess I knew something was up because I did go to a women's shelter with my mom and my brothers and I.
Was this in New Jersey?
Yes, this was in New Jersey, and I knew that it wasn't right. I remember my mother crying. I remember.
How brave of your mother to take kids and go to a shelter, especially back then when there wasn't half as much talk as there is now,
right?
And knowledge and awareness.
It was very brave, actually. Yeah. My mom confided in someone, and that person, which was very close to her, gave her the courage to leave,
yeah,
at least temporarily.
Yeah.
And I think that freaked my father out, that she would do that.
Yeah. Little independence.
Yeah, and because he did control her a lot, and wanted her to do what he wanted. He really didn't allow her to the freedom. You know, she was a stay-at-home mom, and he wanted her to stay at home
Right.
with the kids, and that was her job, stay at home with the kids.
I'm thinking about so many things when you're talking, because I'm thinking about when you're talking about your mom, so many clients that I've seen over the years. And I just want to preface it by saying, if I do bring up an example, it's not going to be about one client. It might be a conglomeration of stories, of characters combined, because we keep our clients' anonymity.
Right.
But I'm thinking in my head how I've spoken to, you know, so many clients with instances where they've had children, and people tend to judge. And I want to talk to you about the whole Ray Rice and Janae Rice incident, and how people were really victim blaming and judging her and not understanding why she stayed. And then there was amazing information on social media about, you know, hashtag why I stayed, why I don't leave. And a lot of times women also stay to protect their children, because they might be the first line of defense. And if the abuser is going to take the abuse out, the parent wants to, you know, take the brunt of that, and not the children. And also we deal with clients all the time where if they separate, the kids are still going to see the abuser. So then they don't have control over protecting the children, or the children get they turn on the victim. We have, unfortunately, several clients where the children have turned on the victim because the abuser has more money, more power, more influence. It's such a web.
It's a sad story. Yeah. So the issue with domestic violence is it's not a black and white.
Right.
There's so many different components.
Right.
Everything. It's not what it seems. It's like you said, there's a lot of manipulation, and like when you started the program, you know, defining what domestic abuse is or domestic violence is, it's not about being angry or anything. It's about controlling every little aspect that the person you know, feels and thinks and believes, and you know, so it's a big deal. It's like having someone just control you, and I don't know what that feels like, but you know, thank God I'm not in that type of relationship.
Right.
But I could just imagine, you know, it would be horrible knowing that you have an intimate partner who wants to just control how you dress, control who your friends are, control, you know, who you can talk to, control, you know, what you can say, how you can think, how you can vote. I mean, it's horrible.
And there's people out there saying, well, I would never let that happen. But what you have to understand is it's a very slow process.
Oh, it is.
You know, and it starts out maybe where you feel like it might be romantic, or it might be a loving gesture where they want to pick out everything that you wear, they want to spend all their time with you. And especially when I talk to the teens to try to have preventative education, we talk about jealousy and controlling and knowing those boundaries. And it's not okay to have someone want to spend all their time with you, but it's okay to communicate and say, hey, you know, maybe I'll hang out with my girl Saturday night, you Friday night. But when you're in that marriage and everything was so wonderful, and then it starts to go downhill, you might walk on eggshells, or you might do what they want so that it hits that plateau again. And I read an article recently that said an abuse victim is almost like a gambler, where they keep waiting for that next positive. When I say that to clients that are sitting next to me, usually that will make them cry, because it really hits home, because they just want that positive. They still love that person, and they want that happiness, and they're waiting for that next time. So it's so courageous that, you know, your mom left. I'm sure she left all her finances behind. It's very difficult. Financial abuse is huge in our area.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure how she did it. I guess it was through the grace of a higher power, you know.
Which is an amazing support system. We always say to our clients, you know, do you have any kind of spiritual outlet, any support system? Although it's Jewish Family and Children's Service, we support the entire community. We're very involved with Catholic charities, churches, synagogues, whatever can give you that emotional support. Andy Lowe, who is in charge of our food pantry, always says, we don't like to give a handout, we like to give a hand up.
Yeah, and that's basically, I think, that what happened in my mother's case. She was given an opportunity and she took it. And it was difficult because my father made it difficult, but because he didn't want to lose that control. But
Right.
ultimately, I guess, luckily he saw the light. And I think, to be honest with you, my mom was actually one among the luckiest, because it's not as easy to depart yourself from that situation. Many women, they actually lose their lives.
Yes, and I do want to mention that you were talking about having that control, and most abusers are narcissistic, and they're the center of the world is themselves. So when a victim is planning to leave or is pregnant, those are the two most dangerous times, because that shows that the abuser is starting to lose control. And when the victim is pregnant, it's not all about them anymore. And that narcissism really kicks in. So there's a lot of pregnant women in the hospitals that we see that are being abused, and it escalates up when that happens. So we have to be so careful. Your mom definitely was one of the lucky ones when she left, that, thank goodness she wasn't hurt. But we definitely, in the domestic violence community, we give the resources and support, but we don't tell someone that they need to leave,
Right.
because that might trigger something even worse.
Oh yes, absolutely, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You get home.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So since you have the, unfortunate but unique experience to be a child in that situation, are there any specific bills or legislation involving children that you're involved in?
There's a lot of different bills that my colleagues and I have introduced in the legislature, just trying to address this issue. And one of the main reasons is just to bring awareness to this issue.
Right.
I think it's important that we start talking about it.
Right.
I think it's important that we start, listening to victims.
Dispel the shame.
Yes, dispel the shame, and also start talking to people that help these victims, like, the court system, and individuals like yourself that are social workers and counselors, and, that see this day in and day out, and what, this is a reality of life. And specifically in regards to the children, there is a bill that I am proposing to increase the penalties if there's proof that there is a domestic violence situation and the abuser abuses the victim in front of the child. That's one of the bills that I'm working on.
Are there any penalties for that now?
I don't think so.
I don't think so
I don't think so either. Not that I'm aware of, but yeah, I honestly think that there should be more not issues, but like a concentration more on how the children are affected by
and what the definition of abuse is, because from what I understand, the legal system steps in when there's physical abuse in front of the kids. But from what I learned when I got trained, it might be different now. DCP&P, formerly DIFUS, doesn't really consider like the emotional and the verbal abuse a reason for the kids not to be around the parent. And they don't realize how damaging that is to the children growing up.
Oh, it is very damaging.
It's incredibly damaging. Like, to me, that's child abuse, because you are changing your child's makeup.
Psychologically, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I could tell you from experience that when my dad screamed and yelled, I was afraid, because you didn't know if he was going to do something. Because
walked on eggshells.
Yeah, you walked on eggshells, and that's not a healthy way to grow up.
Right.
And then that can translate into a lot of different, manifest into a lot of other things as an adult. You can just be scared of life, and you can't go around walking through this world just being afraid.
Right. So we're going to go to break, and then when we come back, I would like to talk to Gabby about the Ray Rice interview and Janae Rice interview yesterday with Matt Lauer, and get your take on that, and talk about some more domestic abuse issues. So we'll be right back.
My name is Karonda Jones. I'm the owner of Kitty Academy of Mount Laurel, New Jersey. The 4 pillars of life essentials are developmentally appropriate curriculum, technology, health and fitness, and character education.
They give great attention to each child, and my kids are happy at the end of the day. Academically, exposing them to the state curriculum early. He's getting the exposure with the alphabet and the numbers and reading and writing, so I'm really confident in him going to the next level.
This year they did little pictures with the kids, and they made like popsicle sticks and made their own frames, and you know, it had a little picture. They were holding a picture that said, "I love you, Daddy," and literally that morning I melted. Everybody's friends here. Yeah, it's not like he comes home every day crying about the bully. It's like everyone's buddies.
The worst part about Kitty Academy is trying to get my kids to come home at the end of the day. They have so much fun.
Let's meet the Glenn Kelly real estate team. And here's the quarterback, Glenn Kelly.
Oh, look. All right, guys, we're going to be very aggressive with our clients. We're going to give them the best service, the best marketing, and we're going to give them the highest value for their homes. Hike and sell this house.
Whether buying or selling, whether commercial or residential, no one can beat the Glenn Kelly real estate team.
Here we go, Glenn Kelly, here we go.
He's my dad. And I have his eyes. I have his nose. I have his sense of humor. But now that he's getting older, how can I also have his back?
When the time comes to determine how you or your loved one will spend their later years in life, don't struggle. Solve it together. Visit Brookdale.com to customize your senior living solution today.
We invited women to bring their body washes to a spa and compare them to Dove body wash. This test paper shows just how different body washes can be. It amplifies how some can dry your skin more than others. Dove is different. Its breakthrough technology has a unique blend of gentle cleansers and nourishing Nutrient moisture. How soft does that feel? Dove Deeply Nourishing Body Wash. This is unique. This is different. This is care.
Once again, Gabriela Mosquera, Assemblywoman, is here as our guest, and I wanted to talk about the Ray Rice incident, and that he had an interview along with Janae with Matt Lauer on the Today Show. I personally was originally worried. I knew it was coming out, and I was concerned that there would be more victim blaming, and I was really happy that there wasn't. I know that Janae mentioned that the NFL pressured her somewhat into apologizing, thinking that that would make Ray Rice look better, but it kind of backfired on them because it was obvious that the victim should not blame herself, that she said, "I regret the role I played in this incident." So I wanted to know your take on that.
Well, I guess first let's, step back a bit. Just the Ray Rice incident just in itself was horrifying, and I did see the video when they were in Atlantic City in the elevator,
Right.
and my jaw completely dropped when I saw that punch, and the way he acted, and the after effects of all that was absolutely, I thought it was demeaning towards her, and just it looked like he didn't care, but maybe he was afraid. But
in the interview, that's a huge point, and I think that really rings true to a lot of people's observation, is that his reaction afterwards seemed so callous. He was carrying her like a sack of potatoes.
Yep.
So to me, just as an observer, I would think that was not his first go around.
That's what I thought too.
But he said it was because he was scared and shocked. I'm gonna reserve judgment on that, but that was really.
That was, well, my first initial,
impact.
my first initial reaction was my jaw dropping. My second reaction was, he's done this before.
Right, exactly.
He's done this before, because just with the ease, the way he just punched her, it was so easy for him to do it. Like, you don't, like, he didn't hesitate. He just did it.
And we know that usually, because abuse is a control factor, that it doesn't usually start with a punch.
No, it doesn't.
I'll say to my teens that I teach. If you went out on a date with someone and you went out with them because obviously you thought they were charming, you were attracted to them, you had a good time, and at the end of the date, they punch you in the stomach. Would you go out with them again? Of course not. Nobody would go out with them again.
Right.
That, yes, do you have a question?
I have a question. You know
Keith
what?
has a question.
We've talked about this a couple weeks, and I didn't think about this. You know what? But do you think she feels safe right now because she knows that the eyes of the world are watching, to where if he ever does that again, you know what I mean? Like, do you feel that like she's kind of saved?
I really can't pass judgment on that because he might now know that the eyes of the world are watching to not do anything obvious, but I've had plenty of clients who have had abusers hit them in places that you don't see. And if I was a victim and the whole world was watching me, it's hard enough to get the courage and what you need to step forward and leave everything and get help when you have anonymity. I can't imagine how hard it is when the entire world is watching. The average victim leaves 7 to 10 times before they leave for good. So for her to leave and then come back, I can't imagine the aftermath of that. So that might actually stop her from leaving if she was thinking of leaving and then maybe coming back. So there's so many different levels to it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, it probably is just being very like a good boy for now.
Yeah, it could be the honeymoon phase of the
Yeah.
cycle.
Honeymoon phase, and then when the next big thing occurs, that is going to go away. Yeah, you know how we have short attention spans, and
right, right,
as a society. So as the next thing comes out, it's probably maybe he'll do it again. I don't know.
Right. So you were saying how you were surprised at the ease of which he punched her.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is also that, it really builds up. So usually there's some form of control, whether it be emotional, financial, manipulative, things like that, before someone so easily crosses that physical threshold. We know that the recidivism rate for the physical part happening again is really great if you don't get help. And of course you can get help. So my question to you is, a lot of people blamed him being a football player on his reaction. And you mentioned earlier in this interview that there's a difference between the anger and being an abuser.
Yeah.
So I would like to know your opinion on that. I know that I definitely got on social media and I tried to educate people on that.
Well, yeah, there's, when people get angry, yeah, and they don't know how to control themselves. Yeah, sure, but that wasn't an anger move. That was, be quiet, situation.
Right.
Yeah, and then controlling a person is I guess that's part of that. To the point, I mean, it's probably like you mentioned before, there was a cycle and there's like different steps, and that probably is towards the end of the cycle.
Right.
Physical control.
Right. So I have a son who is a big football player. And so I know a little bit as a parent of a football player, and I know he's now playing college ball. And he will tell me how the seniors talk down to him and, really rattle him on in practice. How the other players, when he's playing the teams, will try to rile them up and say things. How the coach will yell and scream at them and say really horrible things in the locker room. And there's so many rules you have to follow on the football field. Those football players aren't getting up and hauling off and punching the people that are trying to rile them up, because they know consequences and they have control.
Right.
So it's really abuse when they come home and they do it with their intimate partner, which was our original definition. So that's why I really wanted to dispel that myth that it's because they're in an aggressive game.
It has nothing to do with the game that he plays. And it just, the reason that he was put in the limelight or in the spotlight is because he just happens to be a very well-known football player.
Right.
From, well-known team.
Right.
So that was basically it. And because he's a celebrity in many people's eyes because of what he does and, what team he plays in and because of the sport.
Now, I personally think that we were talking during the break about the fact that how the NFL reacted when they kind of got caught with their pants down is they tried to take away his income by giving him very harsh consequences. I'm all for harsh consequences. Is that 2 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my. I'm all for harsh consequences, but I also think that we need to realize that when you take away the abuser's income, that is going to hurt the victim's family, and it's also going to be a reason why the victim is not going to want to come forward. So I think that we have to work with the victims and the abusers, and we have to, I testified before Assembly on a bill that you were co-writing, I believe, about mandatory counseling and mandatory batterers intervention, because that's really what an abuser needs. So I feel like we need to also not say why does she stay, but why do they hurt? Why, I don't want to say him, but why does an abuser abuse? And so we need to talk about that and also try to bring the help to the batterers.
Yes, because it's a fine line. It's great that we empower the victims, and that's what we need to do. We need to empower them, but we also need to bring understanding to the abuser as to why, make them understand that what they're doing is wrong, and try to see where in their life they've seen this, because most likely than not, they probably are victims themselves, in terms of maybe they've seen that growing up, maybe it's a childhood experience, maybe they've seen their parents, or maybe they being bullied or something. We don't know what that it is, but trying to make the abuser realize that what they are doing is wrong, and how it's affecting the family dynamic and structure, and how that overall just affects the way society is, because we're all I always keep saying this, we're all interconnected. What affects one person affects the other.
Absolutely. It's not just one victim. There's so many victims involved in one incident.
It is, because you have the children. There's an immediate effect because of the children, but then there is the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles and the, and then just the friends, and because everybody's is affected by.
And we know the statistics. If a male is growing up in a household where the male figure is abusive, that they have a very high rate of growing up to be a bully or an abuser, and so then it continues. And if we can stop that one person, we can stop a cycle of so many.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you'll come back again.
Absolutely.
Great. And I just want to hold this up. We're going to have the information for you to be able to contact Assemblywoman Gabriela Mosquera if you have any other questions. And you can go on to servingsouthjersey.com. And on that website, there's all the contact information. Once again, this information will be below our video. And then also, just once again, if you are local in the South Jersey area, if you or someone you know might be in an unhealthy relationship, you can contact JFCS at 856-424-1333. What's great about Project Sarah is if you call and you ask for Sarah, they will know what you're calling about. They'll ask you if you're safe, and they'll put you through to the appropriate person, so you don't have to tell your story over again. So thank you for watching, and remember, love shouldn't hurt.